Have you ever wondered how the city of Wilkes-Barre received a hyphen in its name? This is the story of how Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, helped to settle a bitter coal mine strike and forever changed the spelling of the name of Wilkes-Barre. Wilkes-Barre is in northeastern Pennsylvania, located along the Susquehanna River. It was founded in 1769. In searching for a name of their town, the residents remembered two members of the British Parliament who were sympathetic toward the American colonies before and during the Revolutionary War. They pleaded with King George III to remove the burdensome taxes and to work with the colonists in a cooperative way. The men were John Wilkes and Isaac Barre. Thus, the town's name was spelled Wilkes-Barre by combining their names into one. The town grew and found itself situated over the underground coal field that was the largest anthracite deposit in the world. This provided thousands of jobs in the region for men and boys. Working in the coal mines was dangerous. The hours were long, and the pay was difficult to live on. Appeals for wage increases were rejected by the management of the coal companies. The miners went on strike. The year was 1902. The winter was very harsh, and coal became in short supply. A crisis developed in the nation as the coal was becoming hard to obtain for heating. Representing the coal miners in their negotiating with the coal companies was the president of the Miners' Union, John M. Mitchell. Stalemate developed between labor and management, and it dragged on for months. The miners wanted an increase in pay and an improvement in working conditions, but mine owners refused to listen to them and to recognize their union. A friend of Roosevelt, the Reverend John Curran of Wilkes-Barre, urged him to come and to use his influence to settle the strike and to find a way to meet the demands of the miners and the mine owners. In the fall of 1902, Roosevelt, acting as a neutral party, appointed the Anthracite Coal Strike Commission to study the cause of the strike and to arbitrate the dispute and to find a peaceful settlement. The miners returned to work. The commission was appalled by the poor living conditions of the miners and the dangers the miners faced every day on the job. The results were that the pay for miners would be increased by 10%, their workday hours would be shortened from 10 to 9, the mine owners were allowed to increase the price of coal. In addition, they were required to recognize the United Mine Workers of America, often called UMWA, in all negotiations. Roosevelt became a hero to the miners. Roosevelt's influence was also needed by the Catholic Total Abstinence Union to be their main speaker for their 35th National Convention being held in Wilkes-Barre. The union was formed to deal with a social problem. Miners on their way home on payday would stop off at a tavern for just a drink to wash the coal dust from their throats, so they said. One drink could lead to another until much of their paychecks were spent. Families depended on the miners' pay to put food on the table. Not only would he speak for total abstinence, but also thank the coal miners for keeping the peace and following their responsibilities as set forth in the Strike Settlement Agreement. August 10th, 1905, the day when President Roosevelt would come, had arrived. It was a warm summer day. Dark clouds overhead threatened to bring rain, but fortunately that did not develop. Just a few minutes before the clock at the Lehigh Valley Railroad station in Wilkes-Barre struck 9 o'clock, the President's special arrived. It was preceded by a pilot engine that examined the rails to be certain that they were safe for the special train that carried the President. The train was followed by a second engine to be used in case of emergency should one develop with the train. The train featured 3 palatial Pullman cars, the last one of which had a rear observation platform, in case Roosevelt chose to stop the train to speak to a crowd that might gather along the way. Passengers on the train were some members of Roosevelt's cabinet, his physician, and several friends. Roosevelt brought along his son Kermit and 2 nephews who left the family compound in Oyster Bay, New York. They arrived in the midst of a large crowd who came to see the President and hero of the Spanish-American War, the one who intervened to settle the painful anthracite coal strike. The President stepped from the train into a fine open carriage drawn by 2 decorated horses. With him were his son and nephews. Led by the local 75-piece Protectorary Band and an honor guard of uniformed horsemen, the procession began its 5-block journey through the heart of the city. As they proceeded along, Roosevelt waved to the thousands of cheering onlookers who lined the streets to salute him. Roosevelt's entourage made its way westward along Market Street, passing by Public Square en route to the River Common. The Common is a 35-acre green public park extended along the Susquehanna River. Festive arches over the street welcomed the renowned visitor. Flowers and flags were everywhere along the route. Every window, doorway, and rooftop seemed to be filled with spectators. Climbing from the carriage, Roosevelt was escorted through the roped-off entrance to the canopied speaker's platform, while his son and nephews waited in the carriage. Many waited long hours for the thrill of seeing their president. Wilkes-Barre newspapers estimated that 200,000 people jammed the city, of which 50,000 packed the River Common. The president was greeted by John Mitchell, UMW president. The Reverend John Curran, the local priest who had invited Roosevelt to help settle the coal strike of 1902, welcomed him also. The mayors of Wilkes-Barre and Philadelphia were also present. All of these people would address the huge gathering. According to the newspaper accounts, the crowd broke into wild cheers, waving hats and umbrellas and handkerchiefs in the air at the first sight of Roosevelt. The deafening roar continued even when Father Curran was speaking. Then the president stepped forward and he called to the crowd to be quiet. With his typical spunk, he declared, "If anyone cannot keep still, get out." Roosevelt delivered an enthusiastic speech supporting the sobriety movement. He also commended the miners for being true to their commitment to keep the peace as set forth in the strike settlement. It was reported that many thousand miners were in the crowd that day. With the program over, Roosevelt returned to his carriage, followed by the carriages of the other participants. The president was taken on a brief tour of the south end of the city. As Roosevelt's carriage approached the United States Post Office, he was pleased to see the presidential flag with its blue background and its chief executive seal in the center flying over the building. He remarked that it was rare for a host city to feature it for him. Then he asked about the city's most unusual name. He was told that Wilkes-Barre was a fusion of the names of two members of the British Parliament prior to and during the American Revolution, who were sympathetic to the colonists' cause. They urged King George III to drop the burdensome taxes on them and to cease waging war against them. They could not overcome His Royal Highness's stubborn attitude. As a tribute to Wilkes and Barre, the settlers of the town named the settlement Wilkes-Barre. The oldest in northeastern Pennsylvania, the procession of carriages turned onto West Market Street and crossed the river bridge to Kingston. It then took a turn on Wyoming Avenue to reach the borough of Wyoming. A group of local people were there to welcome him to the Wyoming Monument. They enjoyed telling him the story of the Wyoming Massacre of 1778. A group of children presented Roosevelt with some garlands of flowers, which thrilled his heart. His carriage took him and his son and nephews to West Pittston and across the river to Pittston. There his train was waiting, having been brought up from Wilkes-Barre. Now it was on to Chautauqua, New York. At the Cultural Center along Lake Erie, he would give a principal address. When Roosevelt returned to Washington, he gave an executive order to the U.S. Printing Office that from henceforth the city's name shall be written with a hyphen, and the second part shall be spelled with a capital B, thus giving both Wilkes and Barre equal honor. The name was changed from Wilkes-Barre to Wilkes-Barre. President Roosevelt's visit to Wilkes-Barre in 1905 stands out as a major event in the city's history. His legacy to the coal miners was to give them a voice in negotiating with the mine owners. He was also supporting their abstinence from alcohol to use their funds to support their families. Perhaps his most lasting tribute to the city of Wilkes-Barre was something he gave to them, a hyphen in the city's name.